now to allow for physical improvements as they are for this. I always listen to go to council.
Oh, so the improvements are already in. Oh, wow, so this is a
So
follow-up.
it should be like a 1-2-page staff report, no budget impact, and then I just attach the
Yeah,
plan.
a one-page staff report with some exhibits. Yeah, sounds great.
So that one I'm planning on doing. This one is happening, and what I have to do is I have to write this one and then get everything ready to drop the bid results in there.
And this is this.
Because we don't open bids for this until. So I'll get the table ready to go, and then this one Katie already just circulated it. She just sent it out, and then that should be it. And then this one is getting punted. And we just got the co-op from Caltree.
Oh, we got it. Awesome.
Just got
Oh,
it.
that's great.
And then I still have to meet with Mindy to go over that. Our schedules are all funny. And then that's it.
Awesome. Thanks. This is an extra, so you can have this.
Your friend is
Yeah, he needs one.
his favorite person is talking about his favorite personality. Is he doing asking for some assistance?
He came in, I think, late last week, requesting a copy of the notice of business live.
Be respectful of people's time.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order, June 9th, 2015, and going to ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli,
Here?
Councilmember Clarici.
Here.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here. Okay, announcements, presentations to the public. We have a presentation of Goldbug Park contribution to the city of Placerville. I'm going to ask Mr. Acuna to please step forward.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and distinguished council members. I'm not here on behalf of the Gold Bark, but I am here on behalf of Hangtown's Goldbug Park Development Committee. And we're here this evening, a little late this year, but traditionally March or April, the tradition at Goldbug was to bring forward the last year's success and share with you some of the hopes and concerns that we have for this year. So it's my pleasure this evening that if I could ask the members of the committee and the volunteers that are here, if they could stand. We have one of our more vocal and visible volunteers who leads most of the most highly regarded children's tours. Mr. Duffy is back here with us this evening. He's preoccupied right now making a new film. Without any further ado, it'd be my honor to introduce this year's president of the Goldbug Park Development Committee, Mr. Charlie Basham.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Basham.
Oh, thank you very much. Good to see you. Honorable Mayor and council members, it's an honor to stand before you representing not only the Hangtown Goldbug Development Committee, but also representing the amazing people who work at the park and volunteer at the park on a daily basis. As a group, we're dedicated to bringing history to life, and we all have made a commitment to making Goldbug Park a unique, educational, and entertaining venue that's an unrivaled historical stop for thousands of students and thousands of visitors from every corner of the world. Last year, we had visitors from all 50 states and over 20 countries. The Development Committee does not take it lightly its responsibility to the park and to the city. As you may know, we are constantly finding new and better ways to share the city's crown jewel with the world. This year, we had many visible successes. This last year we did. Two significant accomplishments were the crafting of a new agreement with the city, which you approved just a few months ago, and also the transfer of the gift shop operations to the city. We opened the Priest Mine to public tours, which brought hundreds of new visitors to the park, both locals and people from as far away as the East Coast, Canada, Mexico, Israel, Austria, Chile. Those were all just this last week. These events garnered a tremendous amount of favorable publicity for the city and the park, and it also brought a significant amount of revenue to the region. We've worked closely with the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce in crafting an integrated marketing campaign using social media, which is drawing new visitors to the park every week. We have worked closely with the Chamber in securing highly visible publicity, such as in Sunset Magazine and the Auto Club's Via magazine just in this last year. In fact, one of our committee board members was recognized by the El Dorado County with the Achievement in Tourism Award this year for his work in publicizing Goldbug. We've worked with the outside film producers, and just recently Goldbug was included in two separate Nova documentaries for PBS. The programs will air later this year and in 2016. We built a set of bleachers for the stamp mill for the students and visitors. We're also developing a new mining exhibit near the stamp mill, and we have twice now helped local Eagle Scouts with their community projects. We've networked more with local and regional historical organizations to make the park more visible and more relevant and more educational. And as the mayor might confirm, we are delighted to be making Goldbug Park a premier attraction during the 2016 Gold Padding Championships. We will work very closely with you to make that happen. Our success has allowed the park to become more integrated into the Placerville community, and it has become a source of local pride. We hear it almost daily from local visitors who come to the park for the first time or are visiting for a second time a couple of decades later, and every one of them leaves with a smile. It's amazing what we hear and what we see. It's a genuine honor to be a part of Goldbug and to share its success with the city. I'm here tonight to share the financial success by presenting you with a gift in the amount of $20,000.
Wow.
Give this to somebody. Thank you. We respectfully encourage the city to reinvest the money in our gift for our gift back into the park. Above all else, we, like the city, want to ensure the money is used to maintain visitor safety, both in the mines and around the park. Perhaps this money can be used for improving the appearance of some of the older facilities, which are ready for a fresh coat of paint. There are a variety of projects the city staff has identified that are deserving of these funds, and we'd like you to consider that. Again, thank you for allowing Goldbug Park Development Committee the privilege of working with the city in preserving and promoting an amazing and unique historic jewel. Now I have a check for you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basham. I'm going to ask our Director of Finance to go and receive the check.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything that you and your committee does, and we really are proud of our little park. We really are our growing little park. And I agree. I met with you the other day out there, and yes, we are planning to become a big part of the gold panning thing that's going to, the gold panning championship that's coming up.
I'm going to win it.
Are you going to win it? Okay.
I don't like.
I have to tell you too, when I was out there the other day, there was a bus from Elk Grove Unified School District, and there were a whole bunch of kids out there, and they were enjoying the park, and so they were having lunch as I left, and I started to leave, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back. And so I went back and introduced myself to him, and oh my God, you thought I was the Queen of England that came. It was like,
You're close, Patty. You're close.
it was so heartwarming, and boy, they really made me feel important. They all had to have their pictures taken with the mayor of Placerville, but it was so much fun talking to those kids and being a part of that. So anyway, I just had to share that little tidbit. Yes, Mr. O'Quinn.
Well, on that note, Madam Mayor, there was another busload of Elk Grove students there today, and they wanted to know where the mayor was. At the end of the tour, Duffy took them up to the pavilion and said, "The mayor's not here right now."
I got to put that on my schedule.
I found out today that the Elk Grove students are surviving these last painful couple weeks of school while so many surrounding school districts are out enjoying their summer break. We're giving Elk Grove some of the last tours of the season. As a closing note in regards to Goldbug, I would like to remind the City Council that the City and Goldbug Development Committee are co-hosting June's Chamber Mixer at the park. And as you know, the Chamber sets that schedule, which unfortunately, it's set for June 23rd, which is a council night. But I was wondering if you'd like to come out at, say, 5 o'clock, and maybe you could help us set up. And then we could have a party at 5:30. But seriously, if you could, perhaps with the good graces of the city manager and perhaps more difficultly with the city attorney's blessings, given the nature of the fact that we are inviting the Board of Supervisors, the Board of Education, all of our local school districts, a number of other local organizations to be out at Goldbug on the 23rd, perhaps you could see to it, if city business allows, to perhaps agendize your meeting for 6:30 that evening. I seem to remember not too distant past, we started at 7 o'clock. So with that, we look forward to co-hosting it, and if you're not there, we'll certainly say nice things about you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, closed session report, City Attorney Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. Tonight in closed session, the council unanimously, with all members present, rejected the claim of Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, Tim and Sue Taylor, and no other action was taken, however, with respect to the other matter on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Adoption of the agenda?
I'll move the agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ceremonial matters. A proclamation declaring June 18th through the 21st, 2015 as El Dorado County Fair Week in the city of Placerville. I understand that Fair Manager Jody Gray is not here, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation anyway, because this is a real important event in our little city too. So, whereas the El Dorado County Fair has been a vital part of our community since the first fair in 1859, offering an opportunity to showcase the myriad talents and industry of our citizens of all ages, and whereas the El Dorado County Fair honors our agriculture industry, which makes an estimated annual economic impact of over $360 million to the county's economy, and $158 million of that coming from the wine industry alone. And whereas the 2015 theme for the fair is Hog Days of Summer, and whereas the El Dorado County Fair continues to encourage participation and recognition of the diverse accomplishments of the county's youth through an innovative partnership with the El Dorado County Office of Education, Future Farmers of America, University of California Cooperative Extension, and the Fair Association. And whereas the El Dorado County Fair enriches the public's knowledge of the world around them through educational exhibits such as the museum, the fair's own growing farm, the junior livestock auction, and many demonstrations given by the master gardeners and farm to fork cooking stage. And whereas the El Dorado County Fair fosters increased cultural awareness and appreciation of the arts by providing a venue for the exhibition of dance, music, art, and photography. Now, therefore, I, Patty Borelli, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Placerville, state of California, urge all of our community to participate in the many activities offered at this year's Hog Days of Summer at the El Dorado County Fairgrounds. 100 Placerville Drive, beginning June 18th through Father's Day, June 21st. And the City Council extends its thanks to the many volunteers whose dedication is an essential part of the success of our annual county fair. The City of Placerville extends their best wishes to the Board of Directors and staff for another successful El Dorado County Fair. So, hopefully all of you will be able to come out and you know, real quick, today this little publication arrived in my mailbox, and I thought it was appropriate that I read. This is from the El Dorado County Historical Society, and I just wanted to read you a little part. We're talking about the fair, and we did mention the museum, but I thought this was quite interesting, and I'm thinking that a lot of folks, I don't think, realize that that museum is there, let alone what it has to offer. So I'm going to read this real quick. It's by Mary Corey, director. As we move into June, the County Museum is getting spruced up and dusted off for the El Dorado County Fair. This year, the County Fair will be June 18th through 21st, and the County Museum will be open extended hours during the fair with special programs and activities. In the research room, there will be an opportunity to learn about genealogy research and especially how to use the County Museum's research room. There will be a day focusing on historical photographs, that'll be on June 19th, and a day on focusing on historical maps, June 21st. Docents will be giving tours, and we will have special historical clothing and textile talks. Bill Gray will have his extensive collection of digital images and information for Find a Mine research, and there will be behind-the-scenes tour of the Shea Locomotive number 4, that'll be on June 20th, and an opportunity to learn about the El Dorado Western Railroad. Uncle Fuzzy and friends will show you how to pan for gold, as well as instructions on speed panning, so you can compete next year in the 2016 Gold Panning World Championship. We will also, you're going to have some competition. We will also have some hands-on activities for kids, historical photograph displays of forgotten towns of the gold rush, and a brand new exhibit called Those Who Served, a display of World War I and II era uniforms donated to the County Museum. The County Museum is open free with your ticket to the fair. Check out the County Museum's website at museum.edcgov.us for a complete schedule. So anyway, I just thought that that would be really interesting for, and anybody who hasn't been to that museum, I invite you to go out. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment, brief non-agenda items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the City Council under specified circumstances. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please give any written material presented at the meeting to the city clerk for public record. Do we have any written communication?
No.
Okay, I'll open it up for public comment.
Susan Rodman, resident of Placerville and on the Measure H Committee. And I would just like to thank the city for having Dave Warren support the Measure H Committee. He has been a marvelous help guiding us to how we can best use our Measure H dollars. And together with the city engineering department, I think we've done a really good job. And it's major thanks to Dave and to Rebecca.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Dave.
Kirk Smith of Placerville. Just a quick question. Did the city file a notice of exemption related to Phase 2 after your vote on May 12th related to that contractual matter? Thank you.
Good evening, Mike Kobus, resident of Camino, Placerville Drive business owner. Last Saturday we had our wagon train event. Actually, it started for us on Friday up at High Hill Ranch. We were up there and got rained on big time. It was very, very exciting. And I hear we're supposed to get that again tonight. But anyhow, then on Saturday down on Placerville Drive, we had the wagon train event down there put on by your own Placerville Drive Business Association. We've got a really good group of core volunteers that really put their heart out into this and make it work. I think this is the 8th year in a row that we have done this. And it was extremely successful. It was a lot of fun. I mean, there's nothing better than, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you hear the clock of those horses coming down Placerville Drive and pulling in there. And I mean, it was great. The band was really good. Everybody seemed to have a really, really good time. And I want to thank many of you that came to it. I know y'all had a really good time too. Y'all had a really good time too.
We all did.
We all did. And yes, Mayor Borelli, you are the queen of Placerville. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And I also want to thank everyone, downtown and Placerville Drive, all the business people and all the volunteers who helped with that wagon train. Our wagon train is kind of gliding on fragile wheels. We're going to have to all band together and really put out some effort to help make this thing happen. So, okay.
Somebody's got to be John. Good evening to all.
Good evening.
First, I'm Kurt West, and I'd like to go ahead and say again, good evening to everybody. First of all, I want to go ahead and the first thing I want to distance myself from is from the last meeting we had. There was a gentleman sitting a couple of seats from me that went ahead, and people thought that this gentleman was with me. He was not with me. He's not part of my organization. He has nothing to do with me. I don't know where he came from. And I think it's my own fault that I didn't stand up and say, whoa, wait a minute, what's this guy talking about? But I don't know the form about interfering with somebody speaking and this and that. But I just want to clarify that this guy, I don't know who he was. He's no part of my organization, never will be, hasn't been, don't know him, period.
Okay, we got that, so
good.
Your 2 minutes are...
Okay, I wanted to thank John Driscoll. I was going to say Mr. Driscoll. I don't know if I thank John. We've known each other so many years. I wanted to thank you very much for having all the positive and nice things to say about myself and my old dispensary that we once had here. And I know the staff their staff time is very important to them, and I just want to go ahead and tell the staff that I've been doing my due diligence on this here, and I found some ways to go ahead and cut time, helping with the ordinances that are already in place and some that you might have on your minds here. And let's see, other than that, on my dispensary that I had, it was making, as John said, there was never any problems there. And I was making $5,000 to $7,000 a day. That's every day, 7 days a week. That's on the average. I know that might seem mind-boggling to some of you, but it's not. I have a friend in the Bay Area that makes $100,000 a day at his dispensary. But that's the Bay Area, and they have a lot more people. But up here at $5,000 to $7,000 a day, and it was growing every week. I was getting 10 to 12 new patients weekly when all of a sudden everything fell apart. And so I would like to go ahead and be agendized with a vote for the next meeting. And time is critical because of the building. I've kept that building for 8 years, and I tried to keep it looking so it's not a blighted condition. I try to keep it nice for several reasons, but it's, time right now is running out, and I'm just afraid that somebody might just come in and take that building away. That building does have a variance for a dispensary. It's already been approved, and so it's ready to go. And once again, I just ask that if you have any doubts or questions or anything, I would love to meet with each and every one of you on a one-on-one basis at your convenience, anytime.
Thank you, Mr. West.
I could.
You did it.
I don't know if I was looking at that clock or not. Okay. And just to throw it out there, that comes out to a little over $200,000 a year minimum for the city, and that's not including all the other benefits.
Thank you.
But okie dokie, that's it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
One last thing. I'm sorry. When you see me like this in the afternoon, this is my worst time for my neuropathy. And so while I'm hobbling and what have you, I'm not that way during that like 9 to 2 kind of routine. I only get this way toward the late afternoon when I'm running around. Just to clarify that.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Good evening, Mark Acuna, citizen of Placerville. I would just like to thank the city council and the staff, all the staff members that were involved in the presentation last week by the State Historical Preservation Committee, our commission. Very impressive presentation, very impressive attendance. There were people here from all over Northern California, a number of folks from Fresno and what have you. We were quite honored to have that presentation hosted here. And I was very impressed by the openness that the state historians expressed in their willingness to help, reach out to people, answering questions, and offering their expertise in a number of important preservation efforts and upcoming legislation that is very crucial to the success of all of the small towns, and as well as the attractions such as Goldbug Park. But I just want to thank whoever was involved in making that happen, and also thank the IT staff for having it all available online so quickly. The whole day's presentations are available on YouTube, right. So anybody can see it. There's no reason why you can't take advantage of all parts of that. So thank you very much for a wonderful event.
Thank you. We appreciate the comments because I know a lot of work went into that. Andrew Painter and Pia Rivas helped put that on, and yes, I think we were given lots of great information. And thank you, Mark. I was going to bring it up that they can view that on our website. So, okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council. Mr. Driscoll, would you like to answer Kirk Smith's question about the...
Actually, I'm going to defer it to Rebecca because she's more familiar with the project, or Pierre.
Okay, do you want to repeat the question and then...
Yeah, the question was, I believe Kirk Smith asked, was the notice of exemption that the city filed on the Main Street rehab project for just 1A, and actually the notice of exemption was filed for the entire Main Street rehab project.
Thank you. Okay, consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise. Any requests from council members? Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask if anyone in the audience would like to comment on anything. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for a vote.
I'll move for approval. Second.
Roll call, please.
Did you make the motion? Tricia. Okay, I'm sorry. It was moved.
Tricia seconded it.
It was moved and seconded, yeah. Oh, Tricia seconded it.
Okay. Mayor Borelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay. No ordinances are scheduled. Public hearing. A public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2015-2016 operating and capital improvement program budget proposals. Provide any additional input to staff in developing the budget proposals and direct staff to bring back the fiscal year 2015-2016 operating and capital improvement budget for adoption at the June 23rd, 2015 City Council meeting. Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Tonight's presentation is actually a follow-up to your April 7th and May 21st budget workshops. And most of the assumptions included in this presentation are the same as what was presented to you at those workshops.
Dave?
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit? You've got a very quiet voice.
And this mic is weak.
So you need to, thank you.
You got it. So, as you know, many of your general fund revenue sources are directly affected by the local economy. And so one of the things we did is looked at the local economy, the indicators. One of the things is unemployment rates. And as you can see, between May of 2014 and April of 2015, across the board regionally, unemployment rates dropped about 1 percentage point. And for the city of Placerville, we dropped from 9.2% to 7.5%. And also, we're better aligned with the county as well as the Sacramento, Arden, Arcade, Roseville, MSA, Metropolitan Service Area, statistical area. And back in the depths of the Great Recession, we were actually about 6 percentage points difference. So it's good news across the board. Looking at real estate performance, residential real estate sales, 6 out of the last 12 months, we actually performed, there was greater sales compared to the previous year in the greater Placerville area. Also, total volume was up by 25 sales, which was great. And then looking at the average price for residential sales was up over last year 10 out of 12 months. Your sales tax for the general fund, your Bradley Burn sales tax, which is the 7.5%, is your most significant local economic indicator. We live and die by sales tax. And the city's portion is 1 percentage point of the 7.5%, which is 53% of your general fund. We continue to have strong per capita sales tax, $359 per resident in 2014, due to being the county seat on the western slope as well as having high tourism. Placerville ranked number 45 out of 539 cities in 2014 as well. Your contributors of sales tax, you of course have a variety. The allocation is about the same as last year. Your portfolio looks about the same as of December 31st, 2014. This is our most latest quarter. Sales tax comes in about 90 days after the fact. And you can see that auto dealers 23% and building supplies 15%, as well as your county pool, which is mostly internet sales tax, are one of the largest contributors. And that's important when you look at the next slide, which shows you your fourth quarter growth year over year, 2013 compared to 2014. You can see that building materials was actually up by 31.08%, auto dealers 2.68%, and your county pool about 0.92%. The big decrease in apparel stores was due to a $14,000 adjustment in the third quarter. We were overpaid due to misallocation of a new business outside of the city limits, and they took that money back, and so that's why it looks funny, that 215% decrease. Looking at our forecast for this fiscal year and building our budget, we're forecasting sales tax to be about $3.8 million, and that's about $119,000 year over year compared to the previous fiscal year, or 6.39%. And you can see the bar chart above that shows the assumptions for the first and second quarter. Statewide, the State Board of Equalization's forecasting 2.8%. We're actually forecasting 6.43%. We assume the statewide increase, plus, as you know, we now have, we're very fortunate to have the new Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, Jeep dealership. And so we made some assumptions for that. We were very conservative, but we did include that assumption, as well as the rest of the businesses we dearly appreciate. And so we also assumed 3.2% in the second quarter of 2015, or excuse me, 6.39% compared to 3.2 statewide. And then you can see the growth for next year. Next fiscal year, we did assume the adjustment for the new auto dealership, but then you can see the last 2 quarters in the fiscal year are in par with the statewide assumption. So 2015, 2016, we're forecasting 4.1 million, which is $280,000 more than what we forecasted for the previous year, which is about a 7.27% growth factor. Looking at your historical sales tax, the red bar is the actual sales tax. You can see that big dip in the middle. That was the Great Recession. And the blue bar is basically adjusted for annual inflation. We use the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose CPI as the inflation factor. The green bars indicate cumulative inflation from the 2005-2006 level, and you can see the green bar in the 15-16 on the far right is actually at the 2011-2012 level. So we're anticipating getting more sales tax, but $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, so it loses value. Your general fund is the only true source of discretionary dollars. Local economic vitality, aggressive cost recovery are key to your general fund being healthy. It does pay for most of your city services, including public works, street maintenance, parks, recreation, public safety. We did begin with a status quo budget, meaning the same level of program delivery, and it does maintain the most delivery to the greatest extent possible. We did assume projected impacts. For example, medical insurance is going up, utilities are going up. There's a variety of things that we assume. We did assume a prudent conference, training, and travel budget. And we also assumed $5,000 set aside for community promotions. That's down by about $2,500 compared to last year. Last year was the first time we funded community promotions for several years because of the recession. And we did set aside we did most vacant positions. The positions that have been vacant since the recession continue to be vacant for the most part. We did assume the negotiated commitments to labor, our employees, and we did assume regular office hours for the first time since, I believe, 1992 on Fridays. Your retiree medical, we did assume pay-as-you-go. In other words, we did assume what we believe the premiums are going to be for retirees, but there's no pre-funding for GASB 45. Unfortunately, our contribution rates for pensions are going up by 10.08%, and that's because of our really good quality of life here in the state of California. People are retiring earlier and living longer. I think that's a good thing, but it costs more money. And that's throughout the state, not the city of Placerville, but it's a trend. The actuary assumptions. The other thing was there was some major investment hits in 2008. Originally, PERS had smoothed, and spread the cost of those losses over 15 years. They half the time, so it's about between 7 and 8 years, and that also affected our contribution rates. I can tell you in other agencies they've experienced anywhere from 10 to 20%, so we're very fortunate. The primary reason for that is because of your actions in 2011 establishing a second-tier retirement plan, a lower expense plan for new employees paying their full employee contribution, as well as PEPRA, which was adopted by the state in 2012. And so looking at your reserves, there is a desire to maintain a 15% general fund of expenditures and transfers out. The unfunded, undesignated fund balance as of June 30, 2014 was $1.4 million. We're recommending 1.1 be set aside as an operating reserve, and $115,000 for vacation cash outs. Half of that, approximately $56,000, has already been appropriated by you for that purpose, and we would like to set aside another $59,000 to reduce our vacation liability. There's also $122,000 for capital replacement. We had over a $400,000 surplus last year, and we're recommending using $122,000 of that for replacing equipment this year, which is it's a one-time source of revenue. It's a one-time cost, which is appropriate. Also, $3,100 in one-time conference training and travel. Looking at our programs, we are assuming certain staffing modifications on the next page. And I'd like to turn it over to City Manager Morris to talk about the part-time CSO, Community Services Officer, as well as the part-time reserve officer in this budget.
Thank you, Dave. So at our budget workshop, one of the council's requests, we had 3 requests that we heard that you wanted us to address. One was the community service / code enforcement officer position. Second was the part-time, or actually clerical support for the planning department. The third was the community garden supplies to go towards the community pride. So we looked at those and tried to identify ways that we could fund those, and I want to address what we are recommending here. And obviously this is for your approval at your next meeting actually, but we can take recommendations from you tonight. As you know, what we showed you at your budget workshop was basically a balanced budget, so we had to go back and find money in order to make these things worth. You did, you unbalanced it. And what we're recommending at this time is a part-time code enforcement officer initially. We hope that revenues improve and we can look at that in the future, but we're recommending a part-time community service officer / code enforcement officer. We want to note that that still is going to be very limited in terms of doing proactive code enforcement work, but it will allow for some, and we will have to clearly look at what issues we want to tackle and identify those and prioritize those as far as what we want to do. And then we also looked at establishing a part-time office assistant 1 to assist in the planning building department, and possibly also some areas in engineering. I'll leave that up to Pierre and how he allocates that time to assist in those areas in his department. And then lastly, as I mentioned, the community garden supplies. So the way we identified to fund this is through our reserve officer program. And you won't believe this probably, but I had to fight with the guy with the gun to get this money, but we did it anyway. So no, Scott and I had many good discussions about this, and I want to emphasize that this is in no way that we want to eliminate the reserve program. This still allows us to have the 2 reserves that we currently have in place, and I have asked Scott to, at least at this point, to continue to recruit for those reserve positions. They're very difficult to get. They're kind of a unique person that wants to fill that role. And I've asked him to continue that recruitment. I fully believe that we are going to have some savings this current year due to some vacancies that we have in the police department and other areas. And that if one does come in, that he is able to find one, or others, 1 or 2, we will look at that time and see where we're at with revenues and savings due to vacancies, and see what we can do to put that on. And it may only be through the end of the year, but if our revenues improve, we can continue that. The reserve program is very critical to what we've talked about in terms of our bike patrols downtown, foot patrols downtown, and our bike patrols on the trail that we want to accomplish. So I don't at all want to minimize that program and say that we don't think it's working. I think it is working and can work, and can be a great resource for those specific functions, as well as assisting in the areas of the homeless, some of the issues we've had in the past with those. So our recommendation is that we would reduce that. This doesn't eliminate the program. It reduces that budget by this $15,637 that you are shown here, and allows us to fund those other 2 part-time positions that council, actually part-time rather than full-time, so it's not all the way up to what council requested, but I think it will assist us in doing some of the things that we hope to do. So, any questions on that, council, that you'd like to?
I have one, and it just has to do with what was the total amount of the reserve officer budget? If you're taking 15,006 of it,
Right.
was the total budgeted 40? I can't
Dave,
remember.
can you answer that?
The total budget for 6 officers, 16 hours a month, was just over $32,000.
32. So it's like half then?
A little less than that.
Less than half. And then my other question has to do with then the position of the CSO, would that fall under the police department's purview, or?
Yes, yes, we have identified that to fall under the police department. We think there's some value in that in doing code enforcement. However, they will work very closely with planning and building. We've already talked to them about it. Planning and building will continue to do some of the, I'll say, simpler items. We have some of our inspectors handle some of those things, especially related to building issues. So.
But it won't be a sworn officer, is that correct?
No, it will not be sworn. Correct. That was my understanding.
They won't wear a gun?
That might, I was gonna say, that might have more impact.
Well, you know, you've seen that in certain areas in
I
bigger
have.
cities where they have actually sworn those positions, code enforcement, because of problems they've had in trying to get,
Maybe they could be deputies.
anyway.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
A question on the CSO position. Is that going to be a new person in the position, or will it be a duty that will be added on to someone else's duties?
New position.
New position, okay.
New part-time position.
Okay.
And I want to emphasize too, that's one of the concerns we have is, can we find the right person that's looking for part-time work? That can fill that role. Again, I compare it somewhat to the reserve officers almost.
I was going to say,
It
maybe you
has
could
to be a
find.
unique person that really has the right relationship with people, that they have to tell them, I'm sorry, you're violating the law, you're violating the code, and you're going to have to correct this, and try to get that voluntary cooperation.
Maybe a unique skill set.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So.
Any other
Thank you,
questions,
Cleve.
comments?
And I believe Mr. Yule wanted to comment on the community garden supplies ASL.
I would just really like to thank the city manager and city council for consideration for that community garden supplies. That's going directly to our community pride committee, and as they would say, that's going to really go a long ways towards ensuring the grace and charm of Placerville, and that's going right back into the gardens. And they're averaging over 40 hours a week of volunteerism, and so we're going to get a lot of mileage out of that money. And I just want to thank you and Community Pride for keeping Placerville looking the way it does.
I have a question. Steve, I was wondering, community garden supplies, does that mean plants, or is that?
As of right now, there's no new plantings that we're doing until the drought situation improves. But there's a lot of hardscape that they're working on right now. We just did a mulching of all the gardens to try to keep the existing plants healthy, and now we're working on hardscape. That means like bricks, replacing irrigation that could be more efficient, those types of things.
Because I was going to comment that I attended the Master Gardeners plant sale it was a couple weeks ago, and I was wondering, maybe some of our volunteers belong to that, but I was wondering about, since they are, they're both, community active, that maybe somehow we could arrange to, get some plants from them. When we get rid of this drought and we start planting plants again, that, because they really do specialize in native plants, and they really had a beautiful selection. So it was just a thought that maybe somehow we could partner with them a little bit.
We sure can. We have two committee members that are actively with that group right now.
So they probably thought of it way a long time ago. So, okay, anybody else have any questions or comments for Steve? Okay, Dave?
Thank you, Steve. One last comment about the ASLs. There are two ASLs that we're still evaluating. One is the 3 part-time dispatch records technician positions to reduce overtime at the police department, as well as the partially grant-funded police officer position, which would create a restorative policing program. And those may come back to you in a staff report form at a later date, or possibly in the budget, depending on what we can accomplish over the next week.
Yes, Carol?
Dave, what does ASL stand for?
I'm sorry, Alternative Service Level. It's a fancy acronym that describes additional program delivery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dave, can I just want to add and repeat a little bit what Dave said. So, as you recall, there were two SLs. One was that grant. We have a grant for an additional police officer. It only covers 50%, correct, Chief? The first year, and then I think it goes down a little bit from there. 50,000, okay. So it's probably a little bit more than half for that, for the first year. It reduces each year a little bit. But based on some potential things happening, I guess I can say potential turnover, it may work for us to actually hire that position and take advantage of that. So we're still working on that, but we don't have all the details yet, and therefore we can't approve it yet. Also on the, you recall when we addressed the dispatch issue, the 3 dispatchers, part of that was to help us in the process of eliminating the current, changing the current schedule, which would eliminate some mandatory overtime. And so we've got to work that a little bit more. So we will probably be coming back to you with both those issues. Whether or not we'll have them by your next meeting, which is the budget adoption, we don't know yet, but we still want to continue to look at those and bring them back to you at some point, possibly just in a staff report after the budget is adopted, and we'll ask you to look at those. So those 2 items will probably be coming back to you in the near future. One way or the other on the police officer position that we have the grant for, we either need to put that in the budget at a future date and move forward with it, or we will need to reject that, and there'll probably be council action, Scott, to reject it and send the money, or we don't have the money yet, but send it back. So I'm assuming there will be something action that we'll have to take in that case to reject the grant. So, and we have 9 months from January, correct, Chief, to take that action?
We did the acceptance, and then we did an extension.
Right.
Through, I believe, July 1, contingent on I think we can extend, I'll have to check. I think we can extend up to 90 more days, so that would be 9 months total.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I think we have another 3 months, so we potentially can extend it before we make our final decision. So.
Thank you, Cleve.
Okay, Dave? Go ahead.
Moving on to capital outlay or equipment. We have a long list for you. As you know, over the last several years, we've deferred a lot of purchases, and so we're having to make up for lost time. And before you, and this is a reduced list. We couldn't fund all the requests that we received, but there's 31 requests here, and they range from bulletproof vests all the way down to a digital copier to police vehicles, so on and so forth. So unless there's any questions, we can move on to the next. Yep.
John?
Everything on the list is being purchased.
Everything on the list we're recommending being purchased.
And then the funding's, okay.
Yeah.
I saw lots of dashes, but then I was
in the general fund portion, we're recommending straight out of fund balance.
I saw, yeah, that's the 122,000 mentioned
correct,
previously.
Which is appropriate.
No, thank you. Okay.
There are also a few items you note on there that are noted as grant funded.
Right.
We're pretty certain we'll be successful with that, but it's not absolute. So
it would be kind of interesting to see what we're deferring. You know, we're going to buy this stuff, but there was a longer list. I'd kind of be curious to see what we're deferring. Yeah, just to see. Keep it in the back of our heads.
Would you like me to list them?
Not right this minute.
Okay.
No, but at some point, I'd like to be able to compare.
Maybe at the final budget.
There you go. That would
you
be
want
good.
it ahead of that?
Right,
Yeah,
and then we have a list, and we can find out, you know, and kind of put it in the back of our minds.
Sure.
If we do get all that extra money that Dave thinks maybe we might get, maybe somebody else will bring us another check like they did tonight. Who knows?
We really have to give that one back.
I would be happy to provide that unfunded list. Okay. Debt service. The council had asked at the last budget workshop to present what our debt service is next year and the changes. And you can see here we have in total payments $2.8 million. That's principal and interest. And some new things. One is the 2015 equipment lease. You can see total $98,000, and that's 2 payments during fiscal year 15-16. The first one's due this fall. And the general fund portion, $64,514, $18,866 water, $14,830 sewer. And the good news is, so that's a new payment, but down below your Vector truck, that was an 8-year capital lease, and I'm happy to report that $14,448 is our very last payment. And so we'll own it free and clear. And it
Now
still
we
has
have to get a
plenty
new
of
one, I
life in it.
suppose.
Right, Steve? Okay.
I have a question on that before you move
Sure.
off, Dave. I also kind of wanted to know the length of these, the terms. So, because the City Hall capital lease is obviously for a certain period of time, and I thought it was coming to almost be final.
The City Hall capital lease was a 15-year lease, and we're 10 years in. We have 5 years left.
So that's 5 years?
Yeah.
And what about the SRF loan and
The 06 SRF loan is a 30-year loan. And that began in, I'll let you see the date there. The 06 wastewater revenue bonds, that's 30-year.
So those are the same, okay.
The 97 is I want to say a 25-year. The 15 equipment lease is actually blended. There's a 5-year, so the 5-year equipment was leased at 5 years, and the 10-year equipment was leased at 10 years. So equipment that lasts, the useful life of the equipment was matched to the funding, the financing.
So that particular line item, the 2015 equipment lease, some of it is for 5 and some of it is for 10?
That's correct. Your debt service at the 6th year will reduce.
It would just be nice to have that clarity in here, just so that, in what I'm looking at is so the Vactor's not going to be here next year, right? And then in 5 more years or 4 more years, the City Hall capital lease is going to be gone. And actually, at the same time, part of our lease of this year is going to be gone because that's 5 more years, right?
Right.
And then the next thing that's going to fall off is the 1997 SRS loan, unless we take on more debt. I mean, which is, pretty
Yeah, there's no plans.
standard. But I'm just saying, if we had a calendar sort of built into this spreadsheet.
Sure. In your annual financial report, it has all that detail. And it actually takes you through each year what the debt service is, as well as principal and interest for each issue.
Right.
And I'd be happy to provide a copy of that to the
Yeah,
council.
it's just I think it gets lost in the amount of data that's in those financial statements to me. This is way clear. We owe $196,000, and it's going to be paid off in 5 years.
So in next year's presentation, would you like maybe a column that shows the
That'd
years
be great. Yeah.
left?
Yeah.
And
The terms of the lease,
yeah,
it
the
doesn't have to
original,
be big or elaborate.
the issue date plus the years left. Would that be helpful? Okay, we'll do that.
And maybe I'm jumping the gun, maybe you're going to report this, or we're planning, but you were talking about, we kind of got notice that maybe you're going to renegotiate a couple of the loans?
We are, yes, we are exploring the refinancing of the 06 wastewater revenue bonds, which at that time was a very good interest rate at between 5 and 6%. But now rates are in the 3s for a comparable issue, and so we're looking at that. We're also looking at the City Hall capital lease,
right,
which is in the 5s, and there's an opportunity to reduce the interest rate, possibly in the 3s or 4s. So the capital lease, the City Hall capital lease, actually within the next 6 months, I'd like to refinance, bring a recommendation to you. The bonds have a call date of September 2016, so we couldn't actually refinance them. However, you can do an early defeasance, which means that you would issue other bonds to retire the old bonds before the call date. So that's something that Mr. Morris and I have been exploring over the last several months.
So do you have kind of a ballpark figure of what that say if you did, if we're able to if we're successful in our the loan situation and refinancing? Do you know about?
It depends on issuance costs and interest rates. So it's market driven, but it could save the city, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said about 6 months you're going to be able to.
The capital lease, for sure. The City Hall capital lease is something that we would like to bring forward within the next 6 months. The bonds, depending on market workload, those other things.
Yeah, bonds are
It's a pretty
Okay.
large effort, and so as soon as we can.
But you wouldn't be doing those to extend the life of the loan, just to refinance the amount, staying within the same terms, the same 5 years?
That would be, either to reduce the term or stay within the same term. The other opportunity, there may be an opportunity to leverage that refinancing to do additional projects. So that's something we'll
That's what
also
I was
look at.
hoping, maybe that.
I mean, we don't want to go into debt, but when money is cheap, there's an opportunity. So
Yeah,
we'll be.
They've presented, our financial advisor, we've been talking to a number of options that we can look at. And that's why we want to put all that together, and then we'll bring it back to you to consider, so.
Okay, well, I'm anxious to hear I've been waiting for some information. Okay. Any more questions, comments? Okay, Dave?
All right, moving on to your general fund revenue sources. So when you compare your 14-15 revised budget to your proposed 15-16, you can see we talked about sales tax, budget to budget. It's about a 3.12% increase. All other taxes, that's your property tax, we assumed a 1% increase in property tax, your franchise fees for garbage, cable, and electricity are in there, as well as your TOT, your transient occupancy tax, which is doing really well, by the way. 6.85%. Construction permits, Mr. Rivas is very conservative. He wants to make sure that we don't assume too much, and so he actually reduced his forecast year over year by about $30,000. Hopefully it comes in higher, but that's what we're assuming. Intergovernmental revenues, that's your vehicle license fee revenue, mandated cost reimbursements, your prison realignment, and your police officers' standard and training reimbursements that the chief has assumed for his conference training and travel for his police officers. That's up by 6.66%. Charges for services, that's anything from Mr. Yule's special interest class revenue to league sports to aquatics fees to planning fees, variety of things, mixed bag. And that's up slightly by 0.58%. Fines and forfeitures flat. Use of money in property, interest, as well as rental income, City Hall, the Jane side, rental for that, Town Hall, the pool, so on and so forth. Slight decrease, $5,967 or 10.64%. And other financing sources is your overhead, so the cost of providing service, administration, and governance to the water and sewer funds. And we're actually showing an 8.78% increase in that area. That also includes your capital improvement program cost recovery. So our engineering division, when they're busy working on projects, we bill their time towards the project. If it's a sewer project, we bill their time towards the sewer projects, or if it's a water project, or a gas tax, or a RSDP, their time, and that helps your general fund. Those projects bear the cost for those services that the engineering division provides. And so you can see in aggregate your general fund as presented, 7.7 million, or a 3.64% increase year over year. Looking at your expenditures by department, you can see the differences there. Again, we did assume the commitments to the employees through our labor negotiations. This does include restoration of the Friday furlough.
It's just not right. Look at the elected officials.
Oh.
Hey, we're doing our
You're very frugal. Thank you. So you can see the differences there.
Shows our net worth,
Sorry.
There's a variety of things, and elected officials, that decrease is primarily due to changes in actually reduction in contracted services and a few other things. And so you can see the differences there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy. Non-departmental, just so you know, that's anything from your annual audit to animal control to LAFCO fees, which we did include the increase that we're going to experience next year. And some utilities are also in there. Transfers in and out are also included in there, 1.73%. So overall, 7.8% 7.8 million proposed. That's a 4.53% increase in expenditures. When you look at it,
Dave?
yes, sir.
I think John wants a better.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, I have two questions. One of them is actually about the revenues, and we have charges for services and permits and whatnot. Now, I'm very sensitive about how much we charge for the services we do. For example, how much we charge for swimming lessons and how much for building permits. But have these been how do these things get sort of decided? And besides us voting on it, and B, have they been looked at recently? Okay.
Well, if you're talking
Yes.
about your recreation fees, they're approved on an annual basis.
On an annual basis.
correct?
Okay, so these reflect the most current thinking
Yes.
around that sort of thing. How about permits and other kinds of stuff?
Your development fees, we haven't adjusted since 2008. And
Okay.
I know there's, not to speak for the council, but I know there was a sensitivity to development fees, and especially when there wasn't a whole lot going on during that period of time. But we're reaching the point where we really should look at them, and I know Mr. Rivas and I have talked about it, and that's something that we'd like to do over the probably next year or so.
I mean, we're not going to generate a gajillion dollars, but we certainly want to make sure that we're
No,
not giving away our
and I know we're not Sacramento, but I was
We are
reading
not
the increase though that
Oh,
they
God.
have made. I mean, and so maybe it's coming up the hill, huh?
And if some of your fees are time and material based, and so those automatically kind of ratchet up as the costs go up. But your fixed fees, you're right, they need to be adjusted. So.
And I felt Councilmember Patton's pain there. What was the contract? You kind of went and, "No, what would we pay you people, blah, blah, blah." And then this contract thing, so what was that? Are there contract elected officials out there that I don't know about?
No, there's for example, the videotaping of these meetings, there's a cost for that. You have your labor negotiator.
And that's elected officials?
We have a labor negotiator.
You do.
Patrick Clark?
Patrick
That's
Clark.
our
Not
labor-
for us.
Well,
No, but
you
for
hire him.
employees, yes.
He works for you.
So the elected officials number includes more than just elected officials? Is that what you were asking?
Well, it includes
You actually
services
have-
that you authorize,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's not part I thought that was all in non-departmental.
No.
There's certain things like that are specific, the council should have
He's
control within their
necessary
budget.
for us to, yeah.
That's correct.
I didn't think about that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like- Go ahead.
You're very welcome.
Actually,
Okay, Wendy.
Okay, actually, while I have you on that,
Yes.
Dave, I had questions on the general fund revenues by source. I was going to hold my
Sure.
questions, but since Councilmember Clarici brought it up, getting back to the charges for service, and
Yes.
I'm not proposing we perhaps do anything in this budget because it's too late for all this, but going forward, actually, before I make my comment, I want to clarify, perhaps City Manager Morris, you can answer this. The county has turned down their normal $20,000 of contribution to our pool. Is that correct?
I have heard it verbally. I still have not received anything formal in writing. We made a written request to them and actually adopted a resolution, correct, Steve, that we sent to them, council's request to them, but it's my understanding that it's not being considered in the
Okay.
budget.
So to that effect, I think, and I'd like to ask the council next year for us to look at, if that's going to be, the county residents use our pool, is it 60 or 70% of county residents use our pool? I mean, as far as the total number that use our pool, about 70% are county residents. That's a better way to say it. Is that correct, Mr. Yule?
Yeah, based on our last survey, that's correct.
Okay. Then I think it's fair if the county does not have it in their budget to contribute to our pool, that perhaps we look at a different rate schedule for county residents. I'd like to at least have that discussion in the future. Because, doggone it, our city residents have higher water sewer fees. Our city residents ought to have some benefit, additional benefit, for living inside the city limits. And I think we ought to look at that going forward, and it might be a way to help our revenue streams. It may create logistic, challenges with, proving residency if you're, taking your kids to the pool, or, but that maybe goes for all of our park and rec fees. I think it's a discussion we ought to have going forward. So that's my comment on that. And the other thing I'd like to revisit going forward under our revenue streams is the use of town hall. And I know that in the past that people haven't wanted to rent town hall for reunions and weddings and things like that because of the no alcohol rule. And I know that there's restrictions to that in the past we've been told that, there's challenges with insurance and it's more costly and damages. I think that's another discussion we maybe ought to have, even limiting it to, beer and wine, but I'd like to know kind of what increases in revenue we might could expect if we made town hall a little more desirable to rent for community events, since there aren't a lot of options inside our city.
I couldn't agree more,
Yeah.
because I belong to, like Shakespeare Club.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we all do it, and that rental income is great.
Yeah.
And I know that there's, the burden wouldn't fall on the city, it would fall on whoever the renter is. I mean, that's the way I've experienced it from any organization.
So those are
I've
two
been a part
revenue
of.
streams that I think we ought to just look at going forward this next year.
Thank you, yeah.
And the benefit to the rest of the downtown because of where we're located. Even Shakespeare Club is downtown. I mean, it's close, but we're right here. So
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
get these people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just for clarification, this budget doesn't assume a contribution from the county. So we
Does
did-
not?
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so.
Just so
Yeah,
you
I didn't
know.
think so, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
On that issue of the in and out of the city, the county residents, city residents, I'm trying to dust off my memory here, but if I remember correctly, when I was on the Park and Rec Commission, we actually did charge two different,
In the swimming pool.
a long
Swimming
time
pool.
ago.
Long time
Well,
ago.
even on a lot of the stuff, Steve, you probably remember this. We used to charge two, and then somehow or another that went away. I don't know. It was probably logistically just very difficult to administer, but yes.
You're correct. At one point, there was what we called an out-of-town fee
Yeah.
for all recreation programs and services,
Yeah.
and it warrants a discussion.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not uncommon because you go to
No.
San Francisco and they have certain zip codes that you fall in. And you can get a pass for the museums and everything
Right.
cheaper. And they have a wide range. And if they can manage that, we can do city limits.
Cameron Park Lake has two different,
Yeah.
entrance fees for going in there, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have one more comment on the revenue spreadsheet, and it has to do with charges for services and the conversation we had about water and sewer rates, and Finance Director Warren was saying that we need to keep up on looking at these as we can, because the next thing you know, you're behind the curve.
Right.
But I think that should apply throughout the city for all the services that we do. We're not just focused on water sewer rates, but building permits. Because if we don't look at it annually or biannually or whatever, maybe it's every 4 years, I don't know, then we'll be behind the curve. And then you have this huge catch-up game to play, which is really difficult to manage. So,
Just kind of as a matter of policy.
but yeah, as
Yeah.
just a
Exactly.
general rule,
Right.
kind of just look at it
Right.
a little bit more proactively instead of after we get behind.
I
Makes
agree.
sense.
Good point. It's on my list. Any other
Okay.
questions about revenues? Comments or, okay. Expenditures, there's one thing I left out, and that is your minimum wage. The state minimum wage is going to go up from $9 to $10 in January. We did assume that $1 increase. However, there's talk about raising it an additional dollar. You may have noticed, I believe it was the Senate that passed approving raising it an additional dollar. I don't believe that has been formally approved by both bodies and signed by the governor, but I just wanted to forewarn the council, if that happens, if that additional dollar is approved, we're going to have to go back and revise this budget and, again, look at fees because that'll directly affect our recreation programs. Any other questions about expenditures? Okay. This is kind of a fun graph. We tried to freshen up the presentation this year, and I want to thank Dorothy Evans for helping me with this. But this is a general fund dollar, and the question is, where does that money go? Well, for each general fund dollar, based on this budget, 34 cents goes to the police department, 12 cents goes to development services, 34 cents goes to community services, 2 cents goes to the city council.
2 cents. That's
Sorry.
what we're worried. 2 cents.
You're very affordable.
That's what.
9 cents city administration, 4 cents finance, and 5 cents non-departmental. So just to kind of another way of looking at it. Looking at expenditures, so this is another way of looking at your expenditures. We call it by object or the type of cost. Personnel, 4.49% increase year over year again. Merit increases, health insurance, pension increases, minimum wage increases. Materials and supplies, 13.71%. Contract services, 4.4%. That does include utilities. Other expenses could be anything from travel and conference to memberships to publishing to a variety of things. Payments to other agencies like LAFCO and community promotions. So that's what that is. Again, when you look at it year over year, your contingency, we did built in another $75,000. However, because of the challenges this year with costs, we did assume a transfer in from your reserve for economic uncertainties to fund your $75,000 contingency, which we've done in the past. Last year's was actually funded out of net revenues, and we're going to strive for that in the future. And if we can afford it through next year, we'll try to do that. But for right now, we're assuming a transfer in of $75,000. Speaking of transfers, here's your transfers in and out from your general fund. And you'll notice at the top, gas tax. So our road costs are going up and we're getting less gas tax. It's kind of sad, $41,000 less. As you know, the formula is very complex. It's based on a fixed dollar amount per gallon of gas. People are driving less, and because the city of Placerville, we're mostly built out, you know, we're not growing and getting more gas tax because of population, and so it's just shrinking. In the meantime, we have over $19 million in deferred maintenance. It's kind of a difficult situation. General liability fund transfer out. That's for property and liability insurance, $77,000 down by $2,500. The contribution to the parking fund of $25,000, same as last year. No transfer to the general capital improvement program fund for capital projects, and the $75,000 from the reserve for the contingency next year. Total of $206,000.
Dave, can I ask you a question about
Sure.
if there's a $1 increase in the minimum wage, what does that equate to, would you say, since you just did it for this year, a dollar amount or a percentage of personnel?
I want to say it's about of overall personnel.
Well, if it was is it a $40,000 increase to our personnel budget, or is it a 100? I mean, I don't really know. I'm just wondering how much we should kind of think about. We would have to find.
Yeah, we assumed the overall impact to carve that cost out. I don't have that number in front of me, but I can get it for you if you like.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
And are those people mostly people who work with the recreation?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your seasonal part-time folks. Yeah.
Actually, $20,000.
And one of the things that
Yeah.
it affects, not just the entry level, it affects everyone because of compaction. So if you have a position that is right now below minimum wage, then you have to bump them up. So, and Steve's staff did a great job doing an analysis of what that looks like, and actually, depending on what the state does with the minimum wage, we'll be bringing a recommendation to you later this year to raise the salary schedule to be updated to reflect the new minimum wage.
I have a question while we're on that slide, Dave.
Yep.
On the $25,000 the transfer into the from general fund to the parking district, what does that go toward?
At one time, it represented a portion of the parking citation revenue, which comes into your general fund.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're only collecting about $12,000 in parking citation revenue, and that's because our parking program's working where there's less people parking illegally. But it really, because the parking fund is not fully funding itself,
Okay.
It's being subsidized by the general fund. And in fairness to the parking fund, it's not an enterprise fund, but it's not paying for its operating costs, and we'll talk more about it later. But in addition to that, it's not paying for deferred maintenance. In other words, capital improvements to your parking structure, your
That was
surface
my
lots.
question. Are we
That's
budgeting
correct.
anything for maintenance on our
No.
parking facilities, or is that falling solely to the parking district to figure out?
Mr. Morris and I have had ongoing conversations with your ad hoc parking committee.
Right.
And we're looking at ways of shoring up our revenues to be able to set aside some dollars for capital replacement. And we're hoping after the Main Street project's done and later this fall, bringing some recommendations to you.
Great. Well, appreciate all your work on that. I know it's
You're
kind of a challenging issue.
It is.
That and the Measure H and ad hoc parking committee. Appreciate all that. Thank
bet.
you.
Now looking at your general fund in aggregate, the numbers that we showed you earlier, throwing them all together on both sides of the ledger, your revenues, 7.7 million for fiscal year 15-16, expenditures 7.9 million, net transfers in 206,000, total expenditures 7.7 with the 7.7 million, including the transfers in. So at that point, you have a surplus of about $46,000. You add in the general fund share of alternative service levels, $4,600, capital outlay, $122,000, conference training and travel, $44,677, total adjustments of $172,000. You end up with a deficit of $125,000. However, because of the surplus we experienced last year, we're recommending using some of that surplus to fund some one-time operating costs, like your capital outlay, the $122,000, and about $3,000 of your conference training and travel, which can be adjusted each year. So you can see at the bottom fund balance coming in and offsetting that deficit. Any questions regarding that? Okay. This is another new graph that Ms. Evans helped me with. It's another way of looking at your budget, just proportionally your revenues, what does sales tax look like in a graph compared to your department costs? And again, you can see we talked about how much a dollar general fund where it goes. This kind of does the same thing in a kind of a tower graph form. Comparing where we are today, where we were before the recession, it's real important. In 06-07, that's still our high water mark. We had the most revenues and some of the highest expenditures at that time. We had more staff, we had more programs, but right now we're still, this proposed budget is $621,000 less revenue as compared to the 06-07 level, and about $75,000 less in expenditures. And instead of transferring in transferring out $111,000, we're transferring in $206,000. And so you can see the differences there. And the other thing that's important to note is that inflation, your inflation has increased since 07 by 19.2%. So if you take the 19.2% inflation plus the 7.4% less revenue, that's about 26% less resources that you have to provide about the same level of service. So very challenging times. We're leaner and meaner. And
Dave, do you
Yes.
happen to know at the top of your head what the low water mark was? This is if 2006 and 7 was the high water. What was the low water? Was that 2008,
the low water,
2009? Or 2009,
we
2010?
we had to grapple with a $1.5 million deficit in fiscal year 9-10.
It was 9-10?
And I believe, though, 10-11 was even worse.
Was it?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know what that is. It's nice to see the high water mark.
It's
but
in the,
Well, if you use sales tax trend, I'm sure that's kind of
That's very analogous to what was going on at that time.
total revenue.
Right.
Yeah, we can,
Right.
9-10.
next time show you what that
But my
looks like.
point is that if we have revenues in of 7.7 million today, when we were at our worst,
Yeah.
what was that number?
Yeah.
Because, it could be, I don't know, 7 million, I don't know what it was.
No, that'd be interesting to look at. Yeah. Thank you. This is another new graph that kind of shows you your general fund revenues versus expenditures and how they perform together over the years. And since 09-10, you can see, and actually this kind of answers your question.
Yeah.
In 10-11, I should have thought of that. You can see that big deficit there, that little pyramid. And then in fiscal year 11-12 through 14, we're forecasting surpluses, or we had surpluses in the previous years, but this fiscal year we're anticipating a surplus, and then next year going in with a deficit, planned deficit. So we've been very fortunate, again, leaner and meaner.
This is really interesting right here.
Measure J, this is your 0.25% sales tax for augmentation of police officer salaries and benefits. And the budget assumes $67,000 more in Measure J sales tax, or 7.02% year over year. The expenditures actually dropped slightly. That's due to a combination of things. One, you have turnover, so more employees in the PEPRA or second tier retirement plans, which are more affordable, as well as revisions to the formula that we talked about during negotiation time. And so some relief there to Measure J. It also includes a $77,000 repayment towards the $137,000 interfund loan from the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties. And by the end of fiscal year 15-16, if this is adopted, that interfund loan balance will be reduced to $42,187. And then the following fiscal year, the plan is to pay it off completely, which I know the council really wants. So. Measure H. The Measure H committee made recommendations this spring, and they recommended that we continue the sewer charge discount program as it is today through fiscal year 15-16. They also recommended, our city engineer Rebecca Neves gave a presentation of 6 existing CIP projects that need additional funding. And the committee recommended that all 6 be funded to the tune of $285,000, water and sewer projects. And then also Rebecca presented $180,000 in 2 new CIP projects, which the committee also recommended. And on the next slide, you can see the dollars. And so the 3 columns to the right, you can see the revised budget, which is the budget today. There's $1.3 million appropriated for these projects, and we recommended $465,963 be appropriated in addition to that, including the 2 new projects. And so you can see that where the other funding sources are, but the committee recommended that the $465,000 be funded for next year. And in looking at your Measure H budget, you can see that, like Measure J, we assumed a 7.02% increase in sales tax. It does assume the aggregate discount, so the $492,000 being transferred out from your Measure H fund to your sewer enterprise fund for those discounts. And then the using the $540,000 in net revenues to fund the capital projects as recommended by the committee. Any questions on that? Okay. Sewer Enterprise Fund. We're in a drought, and as you know, this current fiscal year in 14-15, we assume certain levels of conservation. And what you ask, well, how does that affect sewer? Well, our sewer rates are based on water consumption, and so we did assume additional conservation because of the 2-day watering. That's the state mandated regulations, and that's affected your rates, your rate revenue. And so we did include that in the fiscal year 15-16 budget. There's no assumed increase in rates. We are in the midst of a rate study, and the results of that study will be presented to the council this fall. But for right now, we kept the assumptions conservative. Expenditures, $1.7 million. It does include a $100,000 contingency, and you can see that Total expenses with transfers out, the 77,000. You know what, I'm looking at the wrong, am I looking at the right? I'm looking at the wrong page, sorry. 5.2 million revenues, 6 million expenditures, aggregate transfers in 415,000. Total expenditures 5.6 million. So at that point, you have a $363,000 deficit. ASLs, sewer fund, $3,137. Capital outlay, $67,000, and conference training and travel, $12,000, for a total of $83,000 in adjustments. At that point, you have a $447,000 deficit. As you know, this is a planned deficit that hopefully this will be our last year to use our rate stabilization reserve to help smooth the full 2006 SRF loan payment. That reserve currently has $477,000 in it, and so this transfer it'll pretty much exhaust that reserve, and so that's something we'll be addressing in the rate study this fall. That budget also includes a contingency of $130,000. Okay, water. Similar story. We also assumed the additional conservation for this year due to the 2-day watering restrictions. And total revenues, $1.7 million. Expenditures, $1.7 million. Transfers out for property and liability insurance, $77,000. Total expenditures, $1.8 million. And at that point, you have a deficit of $99,000. That budget does include $100,000 contingency, so if you took that out, you'd actually have a balanced budget at that point. But we need a contingency, which we're recommending coming out of the operating reserve. ASLs, $6,200. Capital outlay, $19,000. Conference training travel, $4,850. Total of $30,000. Total deficit, $130,000. You currently have an operating reserve of $887,000, and so we're recommending that you fund the surplus through your fund balance, your reserve. Other funds. These are the little funds in color here. Gas tax, we covered that. The gas tax fund budget does include a $30,000 street striping budget. That's what that $30,000 is. And that's coming straight out of the gas tax fund balance. Parking is demonstrating a balanced budget. However, we talked about it's really not meeting its total operating costs. In other words, there's about $40,000 in additional costs that it's just not funding for example, Steve's crew to go out and stripe, maintenance, deferred maintenance, the IT support to our parking stations. It's also not setting anything aside for deferred maintenance. And again, the parking committee is planning on making a recommendation to the council this fall. The SRF grant fund is showing a balanced budget. Your state COPS grant is also showing a balanced budget. OTS grant, again, we haven't received the award for that yet, but we're hoping, the chief's hopeful that we'll receive a award for our capital replacement with equipment. Your bulletproof vest grant, again, we haven't received the award, but we're hoping that we'll receive $2,500 to partially offset the cost of bulletproof vests. The 2012 grant, CHP grant, that's a 3-year grant that's funding a police officer at 75%. This is the last fiscal year that grant will fund a position, and so the following year we'll have to identify a funding source for that position. No budget for the general CIP fund. Both the Orchard Hill and Cottonwood LLMD funds are balanced, and the Rigid Orchard Hill zones 1 and 1A balanced. General liability fund is really a pass-through. We account for our property and liability insurance there. We make transfers from your general fund, your water and sewer funds to pay for those things. Your reserve for economic uncertainty, we have about $1,600 in interest plus a transfer in from the Measure J fund of $77,000, but then it's transfer out of $75,000 to your general fund for your contingency, for a net of $2,131. So in aggregate, what we're proposing tonight is a revenue budget of $17,636,144 and an operating budget of $17,823,732. Your transfers, of course, are zero because it's net. And so before contributions from fund balance, $187,000 deficit. Planned use of fund balance, $737,000 for a total surplus of $550,000, which is primarily Measure H, the net coming from Measure H for capital projects. Water and sewer projects, I know that's something everybody has their eye on, and we currently have 14 open projects, anywhere from the sewer lift station rehabilitation project to the Central Main Street overlay sewer line repairs. We also have 12 open transportation projects, and they're listed there. From the Blair's Lane Bridge over Hangtown Creek project to Broadway bike lanes. Blair's Lane to Point View Drive. And I'm happy to report our engineering department's been working feverishly completing projects. We have 13 projects that we completed this year, and anything from the Cumberland Road bike lane project to the School Street sewer line project. So it's a long list. It's great. With that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions, receive any comments.
Okay, any questions, comments from council? Wendy?
Thank you. First of all, Dave, thank you again for all your work on the budget. I know it's a huge Herculean task every year, and we appreciate all your efforts on this.
My pleasure.
I liked the new fresh visuals. There was some really interesting information in there, and the project list. That was really helpful for us to always keep in mind. I guess the last question I had, other than the questions already asked, are under the conference travel allocations. And I guess I'm asking the council, how can we make this happen? Because I'm looking ahead to the we've probably all gotten on our mailbox, the League of Cities conference in San Jose. Yes, excellent. Which that lineup is phenomenal. I think that will be so worth our time, and it's great because we can drive there. It maximizes our conference dollars, and so I, for one, will be using part of my allocation to attend that. My parents also live down there, so no hotel costs or anything.
Could we pitch a tent in their backyard?
They are nice. They have wonderful parents. Yes, they are. What I'd like to propose is, Patty, how much, well, whatever the balance, I think it's like $599 for early bird registration.
We just happen to have it right here.
Excellent.
I think it's $500.
I'd like to give the balance of my annual allocation to Cleve, because I think we ought to send our city manager to this. And we haven't allocated anything for training for our city manager, have we?
No, you have not.
No. So I think this would be...
He's not even worth 2 cents.
No, we're not worth 2 cents, Patty. He's worth a lot more. So I guess I'd like, you know, if the council approves, I'd like to see that happen, because I think we would all benefit, you know, greatly with Cleve attending this conference.
So I'm not sure I understand that. So it's $500 for the whole, for your city, no matter how many of us go?
No, per person. Per person, yeah.
To go to, for the 3 days.
For the conference, yeah.
And, I'm sorry?
Plus hotel.
Yeah.
Plus hotel.
Yeah, so he would have hotel, yeah, unless, well.
So hotels are around $200 a night.
So whether we,
Not close by, that's the problem.
you know, whether we budget $1,000 for the city manager as well is, I guess, what I'm, you know, because, or 800 or whatever, because, like I said, I'll give him my half that I'm not using, so.
City manager, you want to go?
I could attend, yeah. It is good training, yeah.
Yeah, there's, like Wendy said, my gosh,
It's a
they're
phenomenal
they're
lineup.
covering the waterfront, I'll
Yeah.
tell you.
So that's my only comment.
Okay. Okay, this time then I'm going to see if anyone from the audience would care to speak to any of the issues that Dave presented tonight. Mr. Acuna, are you jumping up?
It's like, what's my line?
Another budget summary. How reminiscent
Don't
of
you
the
miss
black
that?
days of the deep recession. And Carol, I was in that deep dip that he had, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, but we're still here.
We made it.
I hadn't planned to speak. The group of my fellow supporters with the Gold Bug Development Committee took off. A lot of those folks worked out at the park most of the day today, so they're well-deserved, need to get some rest. And I would like to just spend a couple minutes. Earlier this year, is one of our parts of our working agreement with the city, is we met with Steve and Matt, and we had a very open and honest discussion and sharing of what they saw for the budget process for the future fiscal year, the needs out at Goldbug Park. Of course, you can imagine that the list was very long, and well over $100,000, maybe closer to 150,000, Steve, if we threw it all in there. Because everybody wants their road paved and on and on and on. And of course, we throughout this process, and I've been educating my fellow committee members as to how the budget process works and the reality of the dollars that are really going to be available, and trying to focus down the needs. And you heard it mentioned this evening that there are 2 or 3 projects that they've identified, or we have identified, as very important. And the concern comes in with the volunteers is that they really have a hard time grappling with government time and government financing and the government policies and on and on. And as a side note, I thought it was very brave of Dave Warren to value you guys at 2 cents. Took a lot of courage, Dave. I would have put him in at 1 cent, but
Don't remind us, Mark.
I'm sorry. Mr. Driscoll, we paid for our own conferences in D.C., and I worked the airplane. There's the frustrations of maybe not knowing, so I sat through the whole process tonight, so I'm armed and dangerous. And I'm concerned because I didn't see any of Steve's ticket items for the park in any of Dave's. Very well done presentation, by the way, Mr. Warren. I noticed that there were a lot of things that Sue Rodman's probably happy about, because there's a new sewer camera and a grease cutter and a new rodding machine, and a police chief's going to get a light tower. I didn't see any beams for the park, and I didn't see any new signs for Goldbug, and I didn't see a paint job for our gift shop. Would this be the appropriate time to, feeling a little bit reminiscent of the Pat Cook days, to come before you and lobby for whatever process we might be able to achieve, perhaps not in the first adoption of the budget, but certainly looking at the mid-year? And I promise to do my best to explain how mid-year works to the volunteers. Just recently, one of our responsibilities out there is to make sure that the timbering is safe. I mean, we have a real honest-to-God gold mine. We have 2 of them, and we have a state mine inspector that is very thorough. We are also very blessed to have a very good volunteer that comes out and offers his expertise. They've identified for the first time in, we guess, maybe 17 years, we do have about $20,000 worth of timbering that has been identified. And this just all took place in the last 90 days, so it would certainly be something that would have been difficult for staff to get submitted to you. But these are just the kind of challenges that we're up against out there. And so I really feel for you. I was hoping as day was going along, it was kind of building up and it was looking good and his numbers were going up, and then he had to bring them down to the reality that your budget is very flat. And I know that's very unpleasant, but as you move forward, if there is anything you can do, again, it's to keep the enthusiasm and the participation out there at Goldbug. We really do, the volunteers really do need to have that little glimmer of gold, if you will, to know that the things that they care passionately about are being recognized and will somehow make their way onto the budget track and the processing. So if I can answer any questions for you, I certainly appreciate your consideration. If you need more information, I can get that for you, maybe not tonight, but in the next couple of days.
Mark, did I see in one of the reports that you were maybe considering raising the fee, the entrance fee for Goldbug?
That is a future item I believe Mr. Yule is going to bring to the council at your next meeting. And that is.
So that would
I
help
don't-
a
so I don't
little
wanna-
bit, not, I mean, not.
That has those funds are specifically targeted.
Oh, they
though.
are specific, oh, okay. Cleaver, did you want?
Yeah, one of the things, and Mark helped me with this, because I'm trying to remember numbers, but in our new contract that we established with the committee, beginning in January, I believe it is, there is a process for them to submit projects, and we're required to spend a certain amount of money that is coming to us, plus there's a certain amount of money that we're giving to them that they'll recommend to other projects. So there is a process, I think, starting in January with this new agreement that will allow us to look at improvements to the park that we're actually required to put. And I want to say the number is around $4,500.
That sounds close, Cleve. Yeah, and then some of it is also tied as far as the performance of the sales.
Right.
To the gift shop.
Exactly, yeah. So there is a process that we can meet to, unfortunately, it's not included here, but starting in January, that will be. And so it may be something that we can look at as part of the mid-year budget and see, depending on where we're at that time, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mark.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sue, were you coming forward, or you trying to decide?
Sue Rodman, Measure H Committee member. And I think we've done the best that we could do to provide funding to the city for these projects for water and sewer. And nothing will put us in the not good graces of the State Water Board any quicker than if we have a lot of leaking pipes in a water system that doesn't function well. And with the drought, we've also got an increased fire danger. So we really do need to have our water system up to speed so that it can provide fire protection for our city. So we're doing the best we can. We're looking at putting together a survey to go out to our customers and ask them how important is the discount to them. Would they rather see it used for improvement of our systems, water and sewer? So, and Dave and I think Cleve have been working, but at least Dave has been working very hard on that survey and is about to send it to the Measure H Committee for our input back. And then it should be ready to go out to our customers and see if, because it's almost half of the revenue that comes in that's being used for the discounts. So if people decide that those discounts are not that important to them, we could double the amount of work that we could get done.
That's interesting.
So-
So I didn't realize that it was that much.
Yeah, it's a big hit on the
Yeah.
on the revenue that comes in.
Okay,
So-
thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council. And yes, John?
When we had the auditor here and in some of our budget discussions, one of the things was to try, I sort of recall talking about, was trying to come up with a way where we could sort of simply but accurately kind of present to the public kind of the way the money works in the city government, you know, that there's X number goes here. I think some of the graphics actually would be very applicable to that. Because, you know, when you talk to folks about wanting to do stuff, and I'll take it back to the deplorable condition of the roads out there, and you talk to them about money, they'll say, well, just go do, you know, they always point to some amorphous part of the budget, and they go, well, just take that out. And you're like going, well, but, you know, it's, you know, it isn't, for one thing, it isn't that easy, and it's something that it's a service we provide, and people like it, you know, so. And then when you actually look at the chunks of the budget that those things represent, you know, they don't solve the problem. You know, it's basically, as I like to, when I hear this, I go, we have a $2 million a year problem, and you're offering me a 10-cent solution. And there's no way to gussy it up. I mean, there's no way, unless you just start to hack away at the city, and then it begs the question, why do you have a city if you're going to just sort of cannibalize it and to do nothing but pave the roads? That's the other thing too, or to take care of that kind of an issue. And one of the things that the Measure H thing does show is that if you have some money available to you, you can actually go out and make real repairs and fix things and be very proactive as a city. And I think that I would like to, not right this minute because we have to finish the budget and then, have other things we want to do. But I would like to, and I'd be willing to help with this, is to sit down and start to look at some way to graphically and put the metrics out there in such a way, and not just tell a sad story, because we're actually in pretty, we're in decent shape. We're not in terrible condition. But to tell the story of the city and the money part of it. And this is where the money goes, and this is how much of it there is, and this is where the money comes from. And these are the things that are available to you. The other thing, too, is there's always this sort of magic money out there that if you just went and talked to Sacramento long enough, they would give you some extra, like that. And, and of course, we all know that that's fantasy stuff. It doesn't work that way. And so anyway, I put it out there. I'd be willing to work. I know we talked about it a little bit during the budget process, but I really would like to start pushing that forward, especially if we looked at 2016 and some ideas that we have about revenue. I think it would be useful. Yes, sir.
We have a relatively new document called a budget fact sheet that we published last fall, and we plan on enhancing it with some of these graphs, but it just gives, it's a 2-pager that gives you the overall budget and where the money goes, where it comes from, where it goes. But we're planning on adding some graphs to better tell the story, and I'd be happy to circulate it.
No, that would be great. I'd appreciate
That's a good idea.
That's on our city's website, right? On the
It
front
is.
page, yeah. It's very helpful, yeah. But are you talking about, especially in terms of our road
I don't know.
deferred maintenance?
Well, there is that. That's
That
one of the,
component, or-
that is one of the questions, because obviously if you're trying to scrape money away from other things to put, tar into cracks so that the roads don't get worse, that money that you're scraping away goes to other things. I don't think people understand that. The reason that, maybe we don't do all the maintenance we can on the pool is because we're scraping away at the budget to pay for those other little things. And if we could get some money to focus in on that, and Measure H proves you can get money, focus it, and actually spend it responsibly, and actually get good work done. And that's kind of, I think, what we need to start to focus on, is getting good work done. And people also don't understand, I think they don't really appreciate how bad the recession was on the city, and the fact that the city services don't go away just because you don't have any money. That's the other side of that equation.
Really?
Yeah, they don't. It's amazing. Well, but people think that. They always go, well, at home I had to cut back so I didn't buy as much bread or whatever. And you're like going, but it doesn't work that way.
We didn't either.
You still have to have the police. You still have to have the fire. You still have to have public works. You still have to have all these components. And they don't go away just because all of a sudden your revenue got dumped by 35%. It doesn't work.
Right.
And, okay, I'm off my soapbox.
Okay, any other comments?
I wanted to chime in on just a little bit, that I think it's also critical in whatever form this takes, that that in it showcases the value, the dollar value of the assets the city owns, as in the roads, and also the parking. Those parking lots are valuable, and we are losing value, and I think that equates to people, resonates with them very well.
That's a good point.
So
That's a good
somehow,
point.
if that can, and I think that the woman who did the pavement management study, she talked about the value per mile of road.
Yeah,
Anyways, just
that's a good point.
add that to your plate, Mr. Warren. And I would like to echo what Councilmember Thomas said, that I appreciate the Warren report this year even more than last year.
It's my pleasure.
I have a quick question about that check we got earlier. One, where did it come from? 2, where does it go? And 3, how do we reinvest it?
Dave, do you want to answer that, or do we want to
Yeah,
bring Mr. Acuna back up here?
Maybe we could tag team. Mark, did you want?
Go ahead, Mr. Warren.
No. Well, first of all, we're very appreciative of the contribution towards the park. It is considered, well, let's talk about where it came from. It came from, Mark, did you want to?
That is the traditional donation from the revenues generated from the gift shop out at Goldbug Park. So for as many years as I've been aware, and Steve helped me because this was way back in Pat Cook's days, the committee did originally start the gift shop operation in the building that the city had built as a community volunteer effort. And then it's a necessary accessory out there. You cannot have the kids come through on tours. You cannot have the tourists come through without having a gift shop to have the water and the chips and the souvenirs and what have you to complete the whole experience. So it has grown and grown and grown over the years. And so this was the last of those payments that represents last year's basically the 6-7 months of tourist season out there where we're actually doing all the school tours. So we have given that money over as a final part of the old agreement. And then it was my understanding that this fund was always part of the revenue that was anticipated. When Dave sets the annual budget for Goldbug out there, he's always used the historical figures to say, okay, at some point, I'm going to be receiving X amount of dollars. So this was that X amount of dollars.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mark.
So you add that to the fees collected, and that's our budget for the...
It's, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's assumed in Steve's fee revenue.
Okay.
That's correct.
Within your general fund.
So that $20,000 is in the budget.
It's already included.
It's already included, so it's not new money.
We don't get a raise.
Okay.
Well,
Well, I was wondering, he had just spoken about investing, and I thought, oh, did we just get this so we could reinvest the whole thing
We'll
back
gladly take
into
it back.
Yeah.
We'll buy timbers with it.
We anticipate experiencing a surplus this year in your general fund. The council could earmark that or appropriate it for a specific purpose at the park, if you wish.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Do I have someone to? Well, it says to direct staff to, do you want to?
That's only if there's any changes you want us to make to bring back in the final budget. If there's
Okay.
nothing, then
The only
there's no
thing was
action
what,
that's
what
required.
Wendy proposed, and I don't know if that requires a.
Well, and then what Tricia just proposed too, and I heard Director Warren say we could appropriate that $20,000 back to the park if we do have this. So
Well-
would this be the appropriate time, or is it something that we'd wait till the next meeting when we actually approve the budget?
I would recommend that you ask staff to bring back an analysis of that, because you need to look at how that funds the operations
I was
of
just
the
asking
park
because I wasn't
also.
sure. I didn't know that it was part of the...
You thought it was gravy.
I thought it was
You thought it was,
gravy,
yeah.
It just so happened it was the 20,000 that he needs for the timber.
Like surprise.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I would recommend that after the books are closed and we know what our position is in the general fund, we could bring back an analysis and present some options for the council
Okay.
at that time, most likely in the fall. early winter.
Preferably before we get fined by the state for having timbers that are rotting.
Okay.
I wish we could go up to and capture some of those trees that they're falling up there that we.
The king fire.
The king fire.
They're going down the freeway. I
They're
see
going
them
down
every
the
day.
freeway. I wish we could grab some of them, divert it into Placerville.
We actually do.
Oh, do we?
Yeah. They-
Okay.
No, we use trees. We have a local guy up in Camino who actually does all of the preparation for the timbers for us.
Oh,
but we still have to get the timber.
well, I understand.
Okay, so back to
All right. Tell me
the
what you-
budget and Councilmember Thomas's recommendation that we appropriate funds, if possible, to send City Manager Morris to the league conference. How would we go about that? Another, we would have to bring it back for an analysis of where we'd find the money. Would we appropriate our own travel funds?
She's appropriating hers. She wants
Is
to
that
give
enough? Is that enough to send it?
it. I don't know.
It would be enough for his conference fee, but not his hotel. But do we,
He can have half mine, or all mine, because I probably won't go. Just saying. But I don't know how to do that, so I'm just saying.
Well,
If the full council agrees, you can direct us to, we would change that in the budget and allocate an appropriate amount.
so could we say for those, how, to like, ask each member how, whether they're gonna go, whether they would like to do this, or how much they would like to allocate?
Or we could-
Wendy's already said she wants to, what.
Or what we could do is we could, I give him my half, he could go to the conference, and then we figure it out at the mid-year budget as far as
Whoever, if there's some.
if there's
funding
leftover
way
travel
you could
expenses
do it,
that council members have
or-
not used or aren't planning on using in the next year.
You could do that, or just give us general direction to build in that assumption into the
Right.
budget for your adoption at the next meeting.
I think you should build
Okay,
it in.
all right.
I'd like, I mean, I would just like to say, I would like you to build it in, and I want to make part of
Okay.
it, make it a motion or whatever you need.
Okay.
Great.
This doesn't require, or yes, I guess it does now require a vote, right?
Probably should have for that change.
I make a motion that we approve the budget or we appropriate the funds to send City Manager Morris to the League of City Conference.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Okay, discussion, action items, none scheduled. Council reports from other agency meetings. Transit, Tricia Wilkins.
I would like to announce that the transit bus they're going to provide service from Walmart to the fair and from the Government Center Library to the fair this year, those two.
Right.
Has there ever been any talk of doing it from downtown again?
I wish.
Years ago,
I brought
mean,
it
that
up
was the
last.
greatest.
They said the problem was the garage. It was negotiating the buses. It was just too cumbersome and
Well,
et
why
cetera.
can't they negotiate them from like the post office park? I mean, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no.
that is not the only place to park in downtown Placerville. And I mean, it was perfect
And
for
walking
so
downtown,
many
that's what I
people
used to do.
to have that bus down here.
Well, and they used to just like pick you up at the bell tower. I mean, it wasn't like they drove in.
Right, it was at the bakery. We would line up all the way down
Yeah, I don't
States
understand.
Coach Alley. So,
Well,
I mean,
you know what? I would send you to Mindy.
Yes.
You can
well,
find
they
out.
used to do it. They used to do
They
it.
used to do it.
But maybe, Tricia, you can look into it
Yeah, yeah.
further?
Yeah.
I just think it's a huge asset for the city residents to use.
Right.
Okay, transportation, Wendy.
Yes, we did have our meeting and we approved our annual budget, which is always a good thing. Sharon, our executive staff is working diligently on the agritism mobility study that's going to be coming up this fall. That's just a really big deal, and I think it's important for folks to realize, and I didn't realize what tourism brings and the agriculture brings to our area. Tourism brings in $639 million to El Dorado County. Agriculture, $441 million. Ranch marketing, $222 million. And the wine industry, $179 million. And all of these industries and the revenue streams associated with it depend on transportation. So what Executive Director Schertzinger is doing is she's taking those figures and lobbying the state for them to identify Highway 50 and priority projects within their budget, and she sent a letter to them this week advocating on that. So it'll be an ongoing process this next year.
And also maybe help for maintenance for the roads, the number of mileage that's put on the roads.
Right, so
and
she's working on that, and we're all working on it, I know. And to that effect, I'd like to let folks know that we just got word today that next Wednesday, June 24th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., so it's in the evening, there's going to be a public transportation forum to discuss the transportation system, which includes repair and maintenance with a primary focus on highways, roads, and local streets. And this is a public hearing, if you will, to help identify and implement policies to ensure that all Californians benefit from well-maintained streets and roads. And this is put on with the California Transportation Commission, SAGHOG, and the Sac Metro Chamber. So those entities are doing it, and it's at the West Sacramento City Hall in Sacramento. And so I'm certainly going to that and just I will encourage everyone that's that's really interested in lobbying the state and is frustrated with the fact that our revenue is slim to none for the improvements of local roads. Come on down to West Sac next Wednesday and make your voice heard as to why it is important for the state of California to know the challenges that our rural communities are facing and what it means to us. So
That's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
you. So this is for like our community, for
it's a public
not just
forum.
state and state highways or any.
No, including the emphasis is on repair and maintenance with a focus on roads and local streets.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's so important public forum.
Okay.
Where is it going to be? It is at
West
the
Sacramento.
West Sacramento City Hall next Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 4:30 to 6 p.m. From 4 to 4:30 is exhibits and networking. So I will be going to that.
I'm wondering if we should have someone from the city, or can you act as representative for transportation and the city? I'm
probably
sure
could.
Sharon will probably go down too.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we have voices, so if we could get
I will
some
be as loud as I can.
If we can get some
advocating on behalf of Placerville.
If we could get some city, folks to go. So, okay, LAFCO.
We actually did have a meeting.
Yay.
And I actually was able to make this one. And what we did was, I don't know how many people really even know what LAFCO does for our.
I think very few.
So what LAFCO does is they study various, I'm going to use the word jurisdictions, but it's not just jurisdictions, it's fire districts, to make sure that there's not multiple people charging to do the same thing. So the city of Placerville doesn't overlap the county in what the city provides and the county provides, and we only have two cities in our county. We have the South Lake Tahoe and we have the city of Placerville, and then the fire districts and those kinds of things. So what they do is they study the boundaries and those kinds of things. And what we did this last meeting, which I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Director Rivas, we hired a consultant to actually do the municipal services report for LAFCO. So there will be an outside vendor doing this report, which is going to study what the city does. And because Mr. Rivas was so helpful, it will make the bill less.
Oh, good.
So, and they had very high accolades to say for Pierre Rivas and his accessibility, and it goes to speak to not only him, but also our city manager and how they run the city hall here, that the sharing of information is critical to whether LAFCO is successful or not. So I just wanted to get a shout out to Pierre Rivas. And as long as I've been on LAFCO, I've kind of whined about the staff reports. Their staff reports are so onerous, and I bless Susan Zito every time I look at these staff reports for 2 agenda items that are 1.5 inches thick. And what they do is they basically regurgitate line after line multiple times throughout this document. And so what one of their staff did was she actually took the time to figure out how to shrink these staff reports, which to me was a huge blessing. It may not work, because they have to abide by state rules, but nonetheless, you never really know when somebody hears you whine. And then all of a sudden they come forward and they go, oh yeah, we're trying to make these staff reports a little less paper, a little more condensed. Anyways, so I wanted to say thank you to Rivas for making the city of Placerville look good. And we'll look forward to seeing what the MSR comes out with as to the services that our city provides to the community. And so anyways, that was our report.
Great. Thank you, Carol. SACOG, John.
We had a transportation committee meeting last week. It was unremarkable, and so there's really nothing to comment on.
Okay.
I think it's like 45 minutes.
Okay, SEDCOR, that would be me, and we had a lengthy meeting over in Auburn. We're still in the throes of redoing SEDCOR, and I don't have any final reports yet, but when I do, I will let you know. One thing, though, that I would like to remind everyone is that SEDCOR is conducting a small business accelerator workshop on June 25th, and it'll be here at Town Hall from 9 to 2:30. And you have to register. They do require that, but it's free. And you can get all the information. It'll be on our website. And I have to tell you that even if you've been in business for a long time, everybody could use a refresher course. A lot of things have changed in business, and I think this is a worthwhile workshop to attend. So with that, I will go to...
Mayor,
yes?
I have one more report from another committee.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that Councilmember Patton and I, as well as Supervisor Michalako and Veerkamp, we had our first round of interviews for the Blue Ribbon Committee. So we are making progress with the citizen committee to repurpose the historic courthouse.
Okay, thank you.
So
When are you going to meet again?
Next Monday.
Okay.
while we're on that, I just wanted to get a little, ask a question of the council. Because there's been a little bit of dialogue about, should we just be focused on one building? Should we be focused on City Hall, Immigrant Jane, Confidence Building? Should we be focused on the DA's office? Or should we stay focused strictly on the reuse of the courthouse? And just, I mean,
yeah.
if I could get some input from you guys, I would like to know what your thoughts are.
I think that eventually you kind of looking at the whole complex up there is a good idea. I would leave it up to the committee with some guidance perhaps from us in the county and other folks as to keeping them focused on the courthouse. It is the big dog up there, and it is the one thing that, you know, it has the greatest, I guess, the greatest opportunities and the greatest costs involved with its conversion or into whatever it becomes. So I guess with just hearing this for the first time, it would be focus on the courthouse and then see how that goes, see if there aren't opportunities to then add in the other buildings. Now, my understanding of the district attorney's office and the other building on the other side of Bedford is that they're not going to be necessarily empty at the same time. So it could be a little difficult. We know, obviously, mustard and ketchup, we have control over those, so we can deal with that. But those buildings we don't have any control over, and it might be some time. From what I understand, there's no budget to move the district attorney presently. There's no budget to move them. So it could be a challenge to consider them.
But you stop and think about that. I mean, nothing's going to happen for 5 years, so a lot can happen, and I don't think it hurts to make future plans.
Oh no, but
You know.
I don't want to. I don't want to.
No, we don't
lose
have,
focus.
no.
The fact that,
Exactly.
The big thing is the courthouse and what we're going to do with that, and making those assessments. So I think you have to focus on that and then see how that goes, and then maybe spread it out to others.
And that's kind of a hard situation too, because whatever, I mean, if you were to take in the surrounding buildings, it would maybe dictate a whole different scenario on what you're telling them you want the courthouse to be. You know what I'm saying? If you brought in, like if say Mustard and Ketchup, and the DA's office and those two buildings up there, if that became a 4-building complex, it'd be a whole different scenario than just concentrating on one. As far as economics or what was planned for, I don't know. So it's a hard, to me, it's a hard situation to answer that. Had my druthers, I'd want to figure in all 4, quite frankly. But and I'm going on that from just some information I got a long time ago at SEDCOR when I presented the scenario that the courthouse, that this issue was coming up, and wondered about funding. And the lady that was in charge talked to some powers that be and said there were no interested parties for just one building. But when I told her about the possibility of maybe it being a whole, she said, oh yeah, that would work. this League of California Cities is they're talking about public-private, partnerships. And I quite frankly think from everything that I've heard, the money, just going on Auburn alone, I think it cost them like $17.5 million to rehab their old courthouse. And when you're looking at that kind of funding, it's maybe the county, I know the city doesn't have it, and I don't think the county has it, from what I've been reading in the paper.
Once a year we have it.
Dave takes it away.
And then Dave takes it away. But anyway, so I think there's a lot to consider, and I think that if you have the right people on the commission that they're gonna, that you appoint, that I think maybe people are gonna look to that. I don't know. What do the rest of you think?
I appreciate you asked the question. Thank you so much for asking us. I think, of course, I agree with all of my fellow council members' comments. I think for me, the focus on the courthouse is a primary concern, with thought toward the larger context of what if. Because as a use emerges from the courthouse, it may make sense to incorporate, historic City Hall, and that may be a use. To say we're only going to look at all 4 buildings, I think would be our detriment. As far as the timelines, the buildings are not under our control. I think we would be short-sighted and perhaps set ourselves up for failure if we only looked at all 4 buildings at once. So I think maximum flexibility for this committee. I also see that as a vibrant, creative use emerges from the courthouse, that will invite new possibilities toward those other buildings. I don't know if that answers your question, but focus on the courthouse with always a thought toward the larger context and see what makes sense. So.
I like the phrase, the holistic approach, because it isn't, the courthouse is not all by it's not a little island. It is going, whatever happens is going to affect everything around it. Sure. I do have a question, and I don't know if maybe Pierre is going to be the one, but it has to do with the parking. So the parking lots to the DA's office and the annex, those belong to the county? Those belong to those buildings, or are those city-owned parking lots? Maybe Mr. Morris knows.
Those are county-owned.
Those are county. And then the courthouse, that owns the parking lot directly behind the courthouse, but then it's connected to a city
Correct.
Parking lot.
Correct.
I guess to maybe put a little close, I guess if you were going to combine things, the courthouse and Old City Hall kind of makes sense because they share a parking lot. They have there's continuity. The 2 other buildings, not that going across Bedford is a huge distance, but they are separate. They're on the other side of the street. They're not contained within that one area. So I guess if you wanted to say, hey, if you want to focus on this and have a larger tableau, then I think including City Hall in that. But then you have to, this group is going to have to grapple with, what are the ownership situations going to be? Are they going to continue to be publicly owned buildings? Are they going to be privately owned buildings? That could drive any kind of development in all sorts of different directions. Probably if you start talking about private development, they're going to look, maybe not at those other 2 buildings because they're over there, but certainly anything in that parking lot, they're going to go, well, we'd like to look at all of that, and that could definitely expand it. So there's some real fundamental questions that probably as soon as we get this group together, we're going to have to start really drilling through that too.
Well, especially since
getting those concepts out of the
since you really have to consider the economic
viability
of
any use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
While we're on this matter, where are we with the impact study that the state had said they were going to? Oh, you know? Okay.
Nowhere.
No. No, we just haven't interviewed the consultants. We narrowed the list down to 2.
From 4.
From 4.
Oh.
And the 2 consultants, it's still being scheduled with the AOC. Saturday.
Oh, good. Excellent.
So the judicial councilwoman was there.
Okay.
And
Laura?
We reviewed the contractors that responded to the RFP, and now we're just waiting to schedule those 2 to pick one, and then that entity will do the study.
So have they agreed to fund it then? This impact study,
She
AOC?
wouldn't tell us the details. But yes, they've agreed to fund it.
That is wonderful news.
Because we always want to know, okay, well, can we afford
Right.
the Cadillac?
Okay.
Or can we afford the, you know, the black and white version?
And she didn't have those answers.
And she wouldn't, she just couldn't.
Okay.
She couldn't open that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
card
I'm
yet.
happy they're moving forward. That's great.
Yes,
That's great.
Is that what you think, Cleve?
Can you?
You're right, that she didn't have the cost yet, and I think that was one of the reasons she wouldn't commit whether or not they were gonna pay for it, because they didn't know what the cost, she didn't
That's
know what the
great
cost
news.
was.
That is good news.
Can you say who the two
No.
contract, you can't? Okay, that's cool.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
It's all right, we'll.
No, that's okay. If there's any question, let's not.
I mean, I got it right here, but.
Let's not fight. Well, you can tell me later. Anyway, speaking of things that we're checking out, though, how about the contract on looking at Old City Hall?
Oh, yeah.
Got an email from them today, they are close, they've got everything they need, they're just writing their final report for us.
Oh,
So we
good.
should have that
Ready.
a week or two, I'm thinking, Rebecca?
That helped this committee too. That's great.
Yeah.
And that information there, between
Yeah.
those two things, that information may drive an awful lot of the discussion.
bet.
Because we might get some information back and go, whoa.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? I hate to belabor this, but somebody brought up, when we did the revitalization of downtown Placerville, and we had these incredibly dynamic community meetings, and we had a paid consultant come into town, and they brought in the public, and they had these fabulous meetings. Do you guys see something like that happening, or do you see the committee? I mean, I'm just trying to get a handle on what the committee's task is, how this is going to all evolve. Is it going to be hands-on, just them and the consultant working together? Are we
I
gonna
think,
have-
from my 2 cents worth, I think that.
So much more.
It does, doesn't it? That
It's been demonstrated.
that this committee is tasked with setting up the process, the public process. And I think whatever the committee does, they're not gonna operate in secret and decide with the consultants what the courthouse is gonna be when it grows up and what its next phase is. It's gonna, for my part, it is gonna have to be, and should be, a very public, dynamic process that they are the executive committee, so to speak, that lead the process, but this is the community's decision to weigh in on it. It has to be a community-driven process. That's from my viewpoint.
That yes, and I would support that, except before you go out and engage the community, you better have a really good handle on a whole bunch of fundamental questions and answers that have to do with things like
Baseline.
the baseline, one thing, the condition of the buildings, some idea of how much it might cost to do certain types of things, and then go to the public with a lot of background information.
Were you there when Friedman came to town?
Yes, I was. They were great meetings.
There was no talk of money.
But that's a different.
Not at first.
But that's a different kind of thing.
Okay, so that's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think that was a different kind of thing. It lent itself towards that kind of outreach and communications. But I think here you're going to need some fundamental data. Well, because you might have people asking you for unicorns, and you might find out that giant building up there is a toxic waste dump. I mean, I don't, but I mean, we have an idea of,
No, I get
its
that.
condition.
I get that of the condition. I'm just talking about getting the juices flowing.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you tell people, well, this building isn't worth repairing, it just shuts them down.
You have to
But
dream.
if
You have to
you have to
envision
dream.
possibilities.
And then,
Yeah.
and then you never know what comes out of the woodwork. You never know.
I don't think it's an issue of telling people, giving them a lot of bad news and saying, now go out. It's more along the lines of saying, of a certain level of realism. For example, it's one of the reasons why I've been pressing for an economic evaluation of the economic output of the building, because, we hear numbers that are all over the place, and if it's like, if it's $1 million, then you better have $1 million or something close to it, $1 million project that's going to do it.
Exactly.
If it's 100, and that might be like 5 things. There might be 5 things you could do with that building that'll generate that kind of stuff, and you can do it. If it's 100,000, well, that might be 50 things, and then you can go to the public and say, listen, this building generates this kind of economic activity. This is the kind of the targets that we are looking at. This is a general condition. I mean, you don't want to get into the gory details, but this is kind of the general condition of the things we have. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, but
and then you can have that discussion, because the other thing, too, is you could be wasting a lot of the public's time if you sit there and say, well, what do you think are great ideas? And they might come up with a gajillion great ideas, and you go, well, yeah, but you have to make $1 million.
Yeah, but that brings back to what I was talking about too. If you don't have some vision that maybe there's more than just that one building, you know, like, you've got to have something to task these people with that you're asking to be on this committee. So you've got to tell them how far you want to go, you know, how far you want to push it. And I think it all is riding on kind of economic back, what you're going to receive in return. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, request for future agenda items.
No, considering this list, no.
Good grief.
I think the staff's head explodes. Ask for one more.
And we're supposed to start at 6:30 though on that one too.
Gosh.
6:30 or 7.
Well, there we
go too in all this.
I don't think that's.
I don't either. I mean, you know, we'd get a speeding ticket if we tried to make both.
Not to rain on our wonderful gold mines parade, but this should not happen. I'm a little PO'd.
And the chamber.
Yeah, and the chamber.
Well,
This
and it
should not
happens
happen.
all the time.
Well,
and
it
they
shouldn't
know
happen
it, and
ever. Well, then they must not like
we've
us.
requested otherwise, so I don't know.
Then what does this say? And then they want timbers. You know, they're asking us for timbers, and they have their big party on the night when we can't even be there.
Exactly. This goes on all the time.
I mean, I'm joking.
Well,
but
we
I'm
can be
serious.
there if we adjourn to this meeting at 6:30 or 7.
We have a
But you
huge
can't.
agenda.
But we have a huge agenda coming up on, for
Does
that.
this all have to be on the agenda?
It's
No,
a
it's
mixer.
not just,
I mean, half the time this stuff goes on consent anyways.
It's a mixer. We're supposed to mix. I don't see how we do that and come back here unless we put everything on consent. And we just go, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that'll fly with this group.
I think it's a strategic.
okay, back to my,
No, there's nothing extra.
okay, city manager and staff reports. And under this, I am going to ask Chief Heller to give us a short talk, I guess I want to say, on the awards dinner that they had. And there were some folks that we have recognized in the past and some that were recognized that night that we haven't heard about. So,
Yeah, the quick recap from the awards banquet was we brought together all the awards at one banquet, and well, I'll just list them out. We awarded Officer David Pantoja a life-saving medal. We don't award many of those. That was for an incident that occurred on Broadway during this past year. Rollover collision. The vehicle was smoking. Appeared to be catching fire, and he forced access into the rear and cut the driver out and extracted the driver out of the vehicle. Officer Luke Goodell was our Officer of the Year. Officer Luke Goodell and Officer Art Brown were awarded the Mothers Against Drunk Driving and Office of Traffic Safety Award for top DUI arrests, and that's awarded to officers from agencies throughout the state. And so from our region in Sacramento, those were our two officers that were nominated and awarded. Record Specialist Ray Bosnich was awarded Professional of the Year. Shield Volunteer Bob Frierson was awarded Volunteer of the Year. And Laura Clark was awarded Citizen of the Year for efforts during the year with cleanup efforts, partnerships on Upper Broadway, and of course the El Dorado County Watch
the fire
coordination. And the Facebook page and the cooperation, and of course orchestrating this blending over into this year with the support for the bicycle program, et cetera. So she's a representative of that entire group in essence. Great. With that Citizen of the Year award. And yeah, and then there were some awards for the fire operations and so forth. So it was a pretty good.
Well,
event.
I have to apologize for not being there. It was it's one of those nights where I had 3 meetings to go to, and that was one that I hadn't counted on. So anyway, but congratulations to everyone. You guys did a fine job. John?
I was there, and it was very good, and you just get to really appreciate the kind of the esprit de corps and the camaraderie amongst the officers and the families and the volunteers and the folks that support them, and it was all very good, and I was honored to be witness to it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I was there too, and also, yeah, and also, Officer Caiaphas was also, we had him here with the, he
there were
was honored that night
several,
also
some
with
we
the-
had already mentioned, so that's why we didn't. But yeah, we've got a great bunch of folks.
Yeah, I think we had several other awards. We also had representatives from Congressman McClintock and Assemblyman Bigelow's office as well, and they awarded officers and citizen of the year awards as well. So.
Great, good.
And everyone was awarded, sorry, that was, that helped with the fires. They each got either a certificate, or I think the sworn, they got pins or ribbons, right? Yeah.
Good, good.
Let's give them a hand.
Job's well done. Okay, city manager, do we have any staff reports? Does anybody from staff have anything to report? Okay, this, I'm kind of squeezing this in. I don't know where else to put it, but I want to welcome our new Mountain Democrat reporter, Pat Lakey. You know, I know you were over here kind of off, and I otherwise I would have done this earlier, because usually Wendy used to sit up here in the front row, so I knew somebody was here. So we need to transplant you over here to the front row. So.
You know, I am so used to fading into the background and just watching. I'd rather you didn't know I was.
Well, anyway, we welcome you, and we're looking forward to having you covering our meetings. And I just want to also say that Wendy didn't tell us that she was leaving until after the meeting was over, so we didn't get a chance to acknowledge her and all her great reporting. We all had I think she just did a great job, and I want to thank her for all the years that she represented us. And so anyway, but welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, and I'll share that with Wendy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, upcoming items. We already got this list. Okay, I guess any more comments from anybody?
Just on this list, we will do what we can to keep it as manageable as possible, but there is quite a list there,
Yeah,
so.
okay. Okay. All right, at this time then, I will adjourn the meeting to our next regular city council meeting to be held on June 23rd, 5 p.m. closed session, 6 p.m. regular session. Oh, and I also want to remind everybody again about the fair, June 18th through the 21st. Thank you.